welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today on Bourbon and Biscuits, we'll be making two holiday classics using ingredients that have been long associated with Kentucky. Now one is typically always associated with our state, and the other may surprise you. We'll be making bourbon spiked eggnog and Kentucky roast lamb. Let's get started. For our roast lamb, we'll simply need 5 ingredients: a leg of lamb, soy sauce, fresh garlic, salt, and pepper. Roasting a lamb for the holidays or any special occasion is just a wonderful Kentucky tradition, and this recipe that we're using today I found in a cookbook from small town Kentucky around the 1960s and kind of modified it. So it's very simple. Like I said, we just need the 5 ingredients. This is about a 6-pound lamb. It feeds about a half a pound per person, so there's no set, whatever your butcher cuts you, but you want to make sure it's trussed up. They can do this at the butcher for you, or you can tie it up with some kitchen twine yourself. My butcher, Kingsley's Market, took this Freedom Run Farms lamb from a farm right outside of Louisville and had this prepared for me already. So we've got our lamb, and the first thing we're going to do is slice our fresh garlic. I've got about, for this amount of lamb, I thought about a dozen, 10 to a dozen cloves would be good. So we're just going to slice it to where you can pick it up, and what we're going to be doing is inserting this into the lamb. So, nothing too, like this little guy right here should go in all on its own, but something this big we'll want to go on and give this another slice. Again, this one can go on its own. This one, I think we'll do like 2 cuts in this one to get it in there. So we're just going to slice all these up. And the next thing we're going to do is start to make deep incisions in our lamb, enough for all of the garlic pieces that we have. So it's not an exact science here, we're just going to kind of play with it. So we've got our garlic ready. I'm going to turn it to the lamb. And you're just going to take your knife and just on the top, you can kind of do in the side if you can a little bit, and just stick it in. And a good way is, if you go all the way to the bottom, that's fine if you hear it, but you just need to make an opening big enough, kind of wiggle it out as you come out, enough to insert a clove or one of the slices of garlic, and just kind of push that down in there. We're going to do this entire lamb that way with the garlic that we have, so we'll show you a couple of them. As you can see, I finished making the incisions in the meat and placing the garlic, and I've simply placed it on a roasting rack within a roasting pan that I've lined with foil. This is optional, but it's going to throw off a lot of juice and grease and really be hard for cleanup if you don't do that, so I like to line mine with foil. Another tool that I failed to mention is we're going to need a baster, because we're going to baste this as this guy cooks. So the next step is to put your salt and pepper. Before I laid it in the pan, I salt and peppered the bottom of the lamb, so you want to do that. Then I set it on the rack, and we're going to simply add some salt to the top. I'm going to do it with my hands, it's a little easier. This was about probably 2 teaspoons of salt. You just want to coat it really well. Again, it all depends on how big your leg of lamb is, so I think that's enough. I'm not going to use all that. And this is, I already did some cracked fresh pepper a little earlier. You can do this right out of your grinder if you want. Again, this was also about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons. I think that's enough of that as well. And this was about 2 tablespoons of Bourbon Barrel Foods bourbon soy sauce. You can just use a regular soy sauce if you want. You can use a light, whatever your taste is. And we're just going to pour this all over the lamb. And it looks like we are going to use the entire amount of this. Okay, now we're simply going to roast this for about 30 minutes per pound. So depending on how large your leg of lamb is, we're going to do it low and slow. We're going to put this in at 325, and we're only going to peak to baste the juices as it's cooking. So I'm going to put this in the oven, and we've got a big day today. Jessica is going to be making Kentucky eggnog with bourbon.
All right, y'all, we're in the kitchen today because we are making homemade eggnog. This is obviously a little bit more complex than our typical cocktail recipes, but homemade eggnog is so much better than the store-bought kind that is 100% worth the extra effort. So we're gonna use my mom's recipe today, and we're gonna need 2 cups of heavy whipping cream, 2 cups of bourbon, 2 cups of whole milk, 2/3 cup granulated sugar plus 2 tablespoons, 8 eggs, and some fresh ground nutmeg. So I'm separating the eggs just using the shell to work around the yolk, but you can also use something called an egg separator, which is this handy little tool if you don't like this method. But I was telling Stacey earlier that when I was little, I loved to make angel food cake, and that requires separating like 11 or 13 eggs. So I've got some practice doing this. So I've got my 8 egg whites in this bowl, and we're just gonna beat these until we form some soft peaks, and then we're gonna add our 2 tablespoons of sugar. So we had that one separate there. And so I had my bowl and my mixer in the refrigerator. It helps a little bit to make sure that your egg whites will form into soft peaks when everything is chilled. And I wanted to do this part first because you don't want to have any moisture in your bowl. And so I'm going to be cleaning this out to mix our other ingredients. So I just wanted to go ahead and get this one out of the way. So we're at that soft peak stage, and with the mixer still running, we're going to add the sugar in and then continue beating it until stiff peaks form. So as you can see here, when I lift up the mixer, we've got those nice, fluffy, glossy egg whites that are staying in that stiff peak form. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer these to another bowl so that we can whip our cream in here next. All right, so I got the egg whites out of the bowl and cleaned it so that we can reuse it. And our next step is just going to be to whip this heavy whipping cream. So we're gonna do just like what we did before until this is nice and thick. All right, so we've got some gorgeous thick whipped cream now, so we're gonna get this out of the bowl too, because our last step is going to be to whip the egg yolks and then add the rest of our ingredients, and then we're gonna combine everything. All right, so now it's time to whip our egg yolks. We're just gonna do these until they've thickened and lightened in color, and then we're gonna gradually add in our 2/3 cup of sugar. Get started here. So now that these are the color and consistency that we're looking for, we're gonna gradually add in this sugar while we're still mixing. We're at the point now where we kind of got the consistency of like pudding, and that's what we're looking for. All right, so now we're going to add in our milk and our bourbon. And this can get a little messy, so we're just gonna do a soft stir on here, light whisk, because it's gonna be quite liquidy at this point. Oh, and we've got some fresh ground nutmeg to add in here too. Had to borrow whole nutmeg and the little grinder from my mom, because that is not something that I just have on hand. And with the bourbon and the nutmeg, it's really starting to smell delicious. All right, that's good, because now that's combined. So what we're gonna do is whisk this with our egg whites, and then we're gonna fold in our whipped cream so that we keep that light and airy texture, and then we're done. Okay, so our last step is gonna be to fold in the whipped cream. And then we're all done. So my mom says that this is actually better after 24 hours in the refrigerator. And I think that that kind of gives the alcohol a little time to mellow, but I think it's gonna be delicious right away too. So with the whipped egg whites and the whipped cream in here, we're just getting a really nice like velvety texture with all this. It's a little thicker and more frothy than what you're gonna get in the store. All right, so this is all nicely mixed together. So we're gonna serve up a couple glasses, top it with a little bit more of the fresh nutmeg, and we're good to go. So we're waiting on our lamb to finish roasting and taste testing the eggnog before some guests arrive.
Quality control.
Yeah. In the meantime, why don't you tell me a little bit more about the significance of lamb in Kentucky?
You're right. So I was really interested in this by all these, I collect the old cookbooks, the antique cookbooks, and I noticed so much lamb in the past, like the One really old one I have from the late 1800s all the way up to this recipe today from like the 1960s. And just trying to figure out why that sort of, you don't hear about it as much anymore,
I don't really
right?
know anything about it.
But apparently, in the 1920s and 1930s, the Kentucky lamb stock and the producers, it was noted nationwide. And I found all these press clippings from like the New York Times, famous chefs, calling attention to if you wanted the best lamb in the country, you must get Kentucky lamb. So
kind of like how our country ham is almost like the Iberico of America.
Absolutely. And our sorghums, and of course our Kentucky bourbon. So and so there is a group, the Kentucky Lamb Association, and some farms, local farms. Back in the day, it was served with mint jelly and mint sauces. You'll see a lot of
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I know, my dad did not like that at all. I'm going to make that an option tonight.
Okay.
But also, I've got a bonus recipe on the website I'm going to whip up a bourbon cream sauce here in a minute, and we'll serve it with that. And of course,
Sounds
the traditional Henry Bain sauce as well.
Yeah. Well, I also saw you peeling some potatoes, and I saw some green beans. What else is on the menu?
We'll have a little salad. We'll start with some pimento cheese, of course, as an app. And then with all this cooking, I didn't have time to bake, but I did pick up, also at Kingsley's, a Kentucky silk pie.
Oh, nice. And we're having our guests make their own party favors. We're going to have them roll and dip their own bourbon balls.
Right, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to do before they get here, so we better get started.
All right, absolutely.
We'll see you next time
On Bourbon
and Biscuits.
Cheers. Cheers.